ultimate test of blind faith. In just a few months, these guide dogs will act as the most trusted companion of someone visually impaired. But today, medicine and technology are making enormous strides to help out man's best friend. 80% of visual impairment can now be avoided or even cured. And of course, seeing is believing. Welcome to this week's show. Coming up this week, the future of artificial retinas. Patients blind because of a degenerative eye disease can now perceive forms and shapes thanks to electrodes implanted onto their inner eye. We investigate this breakthrough technique. Next, when visual impairment has nothing to do with one's eyes, but instead with one's brain, we meet a young girl diagnosed blind at birth who can now see following rehabilitation and education. And finally, hitting home runs in Italy. Baseball for the blind is proving popular with both sighted and non-sighted players. We meet the athletes who describe the sense of freedom the sport offers their community. Armelle is an art whisperer. Today she's the eyes of Christine, who is visually impaired. The two are appreciating the work of Li Wei, a contemporary Chinese artist. Armelle explains the art. Christine listens.
We can see the baby's feet under the elbow of a young woman.
Christine was born with a visual deficiency, but for many others who've become blind over time, the hope of seeing the art itself may lie with an artificial retina. The technique is already being used in Europe and the United States with success, and research only promises to improve its performance. On any ordinary day, Gilles must make this walk with someone by his side. He's been legally blind for 25 years, the result of a degenerative condition. Today he's among the first in the world to benefit from research to bring back his vision. And by all accounts, it's working.
That's a triangle. It's a cross.
Gilles can perceive what's on the screen thanks to these sophisticated glasses. An inbuilt camera transmits the scene to a portable computer carried on the hip, which sends instructions back to the glasses. The information is then transmitted wirelessly to the patient's eye, which has been fitted with an implant, an array of 60 electrodes inserted onto the retina. Gilles can only recognise the images because he hasn't always been blind.
Because I already have the form of an S in my head, I'm able to reconstruct it and recognise it as an S.
Pierre-Olivier Barral is an ophthalmologist. He's part of the only team in France involved in the trial with Gilles and 3 other patients. Here we can see vision of the operation, a 2 to 3 hour process to implant the chip onto the surface of the retina, allowing patients to distinguish outlines and other basic shapes.
It's not vision like you or I might have. It's not vision with colour. It's not vision with movement. It's more like a flash. It's black and white. It's what we call phosphene. It's very primal vision.
At the Institute of Vision in Paris, researchers are looking at ways to improve its performance. Here they're using diamond, which could be more resistant than metal. But even more promising is the idea of adding more pixels and electrodes.
With the current implant, the Argus 2, patients have a resolution of 60 pixels. We can see it's quite difficult to recognize this face. Studies with volunteers have shown that we need at least 600 pixels or even 1,000 to accurately recognize the face. I think it's important for patients to be able to recognize those close to them, but also to be able to navigate in the street.
Something's here.
This patient in Manchester in the UK is already able to manage without a white cane.
It's here, I think.
She's one of around 30 people in the world benefiting from an artificial retina, which for the moment comes with a price tag of €80,000. Eventually, though, the technique could bring hundreds of thousands of people out of darkness and into the light, just like the cochlear implant has allowed the deaf community to exit a world of silence. This is where books are printed for the blind. Braille was first used in the early 1800s, and it works so well that it's still being used widely today. But in the meantime, science has evolved, and a child that was deemed blind 200 years ago may not necessarily be classified the same way today. This next report looks at a condition known as cortical blindness, which doctors now believe can be improved by retraining the brain.
Meet Rose, outwardly as happy as any other young toddler, but shortly after she was born, ophthalmologists said she was blind.
We started taking steps to deal with things as though she were nearly blind. We looked at schooling, how other young blind people were coping.
However, there was more to Rose's situation than met the eye. Neurological tests revealed something quite unexpected. This footage shows Rose at 6 months, filmed in the dark. A small light moves around in the distance unseen. However, when the light source is much closer, Rose reacts. It means she can see, although in an extremely limited way.
The most moving moment for us was the day when Rose looked at us right in the eyes. She was finally looking at us, smiling at us.
A neurologist at France's National Centre for Scientific Research brought Rose's problem to light: cortical blindness. The issue wasn't with her eyes, but her brain. When an ordinary person looks at, say, several apples, the eyes send a signal to the brain which puts the image back together. In Rose's case, the part of the brain needed to interpret the signal wasn't working. She'd have to relearn how to see. A long process that's finally yielded results.
Look, you can even see this little button. That's it, push. There you go.
Well done, that's super. Where's the sweetie?
Can you show me on the book? There it is. Well done. Our work is about getting a different part of the brain to analyse and detect. We force this different region to make assumptions about the images that the eyes are sending into the brain.
Little by little, the work they're doing at the research centre is helping hundreds find a path back to clarity, more than 600 in all.
Tandem bicycle with a non-sighted passenger is just one way the blind community can take part in team exercise. But there's many other sports that are much less likely that are also being played. In Italy, a blind baseball league has been running for 15 years. France 1 Seema Gupta went to meet the players and find out what the sport means for those who can't see.
They bat, catch and run to touch the base. It's like a regular game of baseball, except these players can't see the ball. Instead, they listen for it. In this game, the baseball has bells inside.
The moment you hit the ball, and you hear that the ball's been hit well, it's kind of like an explosion of joy.
5 blind fielders listen for where the ball lands. Sighted assistants then clap paddles to help orientate runners to the bases. There are no pitches either. The batter holds and bats the ball himself. Volunteer coaches are former federation players. They've seen how these blind players shine as they get into the swing of things.
Those that have lost their sight over time, well, they still have certain skills, like knowing how to throw an object. While those who are born blind, they have to learn absolutely everything.
An immigrant from Albania, Ariola Dedai has been playing in Italy since 2005. She's not totally blind and so wears a blindfold to be fair to her teammates. For her, the game's a step towards greater independence.
When I run, the fact that I can run alone, it gives me a sense of freedom. I feel like I am flying when I run.
For those born blind like Matteo Briglia, baseball was a challenge when he took it up 2 years ago.
When they first told me to run, I was supposed to run, but really my legs were not moving. This sport makes you much more independent. It helps a great deal to move on, to walk, to have a knowledge of the space, and so it helps you a lot in your mobility.
Italy's Blind Baseball Association has brought their passion for the game as far away as Cuba and has helped set up teams in France and Germany. But they're taking aim at the Paralympics, hoping to bring blind baseball to the 2016 Games, a move that would definitely be a home run for this sport.
So blind people can play baseball, but surely they can't drive. Not so quick. Earlier this year, Google released images of its self-driving car. Behind the wheel, Steve Mann, who is 95% blind. In the video, Mann lets the car steer autonomously as he runs errands and even stops by Taco Bell. The modified vehicle has sensors which take in surrounding information and make decisions about every aspect of driving. This week from a restaurant in Paris known as Dans le Noir, or In the Dark, and it truly is pitch black in here. I can't even see my hand in front of my face. The idea is to give customers a sense of what it would be like to spend a night having dinner with friends without vision. All of the waiters here are blind. They guide the customers through their meal, helping them to locate their food or even know when a glass of wine is full. It's more than just a game. It's a way to appreciate a meal without one of our most powerful senses. That brings us to the end of this week's show here on France 24. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you, as always, next time.